We know sports.
10-5 touchdown!
97.3 ESPN, WENJ, WENJ HD, Millville, Atlantic City, a Town Square media station. This is Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app. Now, live from the Matt Black Kia Studios.
What a move!
Here's Josh Hennig.
Monday edition of Game Night, the day after Eagles win. Hey, I didn't know if they could win that game or not, but they went out and proved me wrong. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Hanging out with you guys for the next hour. We will talking Eagles and football throughout the show this hour. Chris Franklin from NJ.com, Eagles Rare, will join us coming up at 6:20 to get more into the Eagles when he was out there in Denver yesterday, so he can give us a first eye look at the situation out there. As, listen, the Eagles had a strategy. They went in there and said, we're going to do something, and we're going to make the Denver Broncos beat us. And guess what? That's pretty much what they did yesterday. The Broncos were unable to stop them. So, a big part of the football weekend, obviously anybody who was watching the NFL last weekend went into this weekend wondering how many upsets would you get. And between the tie between Detroit and the Steelers and Kansas City destroying the Raiders last night and the Eagles win yesterday and the Cowboys just completely embarrassing the Falcons, I think we're semi back on track in the football world after last weekend's fiasco of upsets. Of course, you can join the conversation. As always, you can DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app, thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. And we are live on YouTube and Twitter at 973 ESPN, and the text board is open at 609-403-0973. One of my biggest takeaways from the game yesterday is the fact that I don't think people want to accept that the Eagles have talent. I keep telling you guys throughout the years that this idea, when people use the word, he sucks, right? Let me tell you something. There's nobody in the NFL who sucks. They're all professional athletes. Are there guys who are better than other players? Yes. Are there players who are better suited for certain offensive schemes? Yes. So how do the Eagles stop an offense in the Broncos that went out there and absolutely destroyed the Dallas Cowboys in Dallas week before? It's because they have talent. Darius Slay, he's still one of the top 10, 12 corners in the NFL. Steven Nelson did a very good job yesterday. The Eagles basically told the Broncos, we're not going to let Tim Patrick, Jerry Jeudy, and your receivers beat us. You're going to have to beat us with the tight end and with the running backs. They made the gamble. They rolled the dice. And that was a huge part of why they won the game. The Eagles went in there with a specific strategy. They went into the game saying, look, we know what we have to do to win. We're going to make you, the Denver Broncos, stop us. It's a very simple strategy. But it's not a strategy that always works out because you have to have a certain high level of talent and execution to make that happen. It's a marriage of two worlds having to come together. So as a result, we know the Eagles have talent, whether people want to admit that or not. They got the job done on Sunday afternoon. I'm not going to sit here and act like they're a playoff team. Whether they make it or not, doesn't mean they're going to win a Super Bowl. The Eagles have talent, though. And it's about time people start accepting that. I know it's hard for some people to admit that because in admitting that, you have to give credit to an organization that is very easy to throw under the bus because of what has happened over the last couple of years. But at the end of the day, Jalen Hurts has talent. Darius Slay has talent. Davion Taylor has talent. Milton Williams has talent. I can go down the whole roster. There is talent on this team. And this offensive line absolutely went out there and just punched the Broncos in the face multiple times and just kicked them to the curb so they could run the ball. You have these two monsters on the left side in Mailata and Dickerson. And all Sirianni's doing is going out there and saying, take him down, boys. And that's basically what they're doing. It's absolutely insane that I think that there are people who don't want to accept that. Look, the Eagles are in a year of transition. Whether they make the postseason or not this year, it's kind of a shoulder shrug because things have to go their way. But at the end of the day, this team does have talent. And there's a history of teams when they make the postseason, it helps the young players grow. Doesn't happen every time, not in every situation, but it does benefit people to get experience. And for me, I would love to see Jalen Hurts get a shot in the postseason just so he knows what it's like. Because the NFL playoffs are different than the college football playoffs. The college football playoffs, for those who don't know, it's an intense environment with a lot of pressure, but the game is not as fast. A lot of times in the college football playoff, the game seems to slow down a little bit. The NFL postseason, things are way more ratcheted up, way more intense, way faster, way more, just so much to absorb and go on. So it would definitely benefit the Eagles' young players like Hurts and Smith and all these other guys to be in the postseason. If they don't get there, it doesn't change the fact, one way or the other, that they do have things to improve on. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to say that, hey, they need more help at linebacker. Hey, they need more help at defensive end. Right? We know what this team needs as a general principle, but the biggest thing they need is growth. And for them to get that win yesterday shows you growth from both the players and the coaches. Now, I'm not going to sit here and say I'm sold on Jonathan Gannon or I'm love Nick Sirianni now. I still think they're both Jekyll and Hydes who are still trying to figure their way out through all this. And frankly, if this team follows the pattern of their season for the last few weeks, then next week's going to be a loss, right? Because they win on the road, they lose at home. It seems to be the pattern, right? Think about the last few games for this team. Win in Denver, lose at home to the Chargers. Win in Detroit, lose on the road at Vegas. Lose at home to Tampa. Win on the road at the Panthers. Is that the pattern here? It's almost every other week is the opposite situation. Now, can they beat the Saints? Of course they could beat the Saints. The Saints lost a rock fight to the Titans. The Titans are without their best player, Derrick Henry. And the Saints were without their best offensive weapon, Alvin Kamara. So basically, it was two teams seeing who was going to drop first in terms of a rock'em sock'em robot match. So you can beat that team. Listen, you beat the Panthers. You certainly can beat the Saints. Now, of course, you haven't won a game at home yet this year, so who knows how that's going to go. But listen, the reality is that yesterday's game showed us one thing. This team has talent, and these players are finally playing up to their ability. Jalen Hurts showed you why he was one of the best efficient quarterbacks in college his final year at Oklahoma. Why he was top 5 in college football in completion percentage. Because he can do that kind of thing. He can be accurate. He can be efficient. You saw this offensive line, why they drafted Landon Dickerson, why they wanted to develop Jordan Mailata, why Jason Kelsey is one of the best centers in the NFL. why Lane Johnson can still play at a high level, why Jack Driscoll is arguably their best versatile offensive lineman. And listen, you saw why the talent evaluators in this organization wanted Jack Stoll, because he can go out there and be a poor man's Dallas Goedert. Can he be Dallas Goedert fully? No, he's not that physically gifted. But he can do the blocking and the pass catching if you absolutely need him to. Milton Williams, you saw what he could do yesterday. Hargrave, you saw him out there. You went out there and you saw the defensive line do work. Davion Taylor forced 2 fumbles in the game yesterday. He's finally rounding into form. A guy who is basically the Joel Embiid of the NFL. This guy barely played high school football, got a D1 scholarship. He played a few years in college, and just now he's understanding how to read offenses. Sirianni said today at the press conference how physically gifted he is. Can you imagine what happened when Davion Taylor actually learns football? Learns football, what he can do? And like I said, Darius Slay is still a high-level corner. And Avonte Maddox doesn't get enough credit. That dude was all over the place yesterday. For the last few weeks, he has been a force in the slot, filling in the zone coverages, doing a great job at pickups. The team has ability. It has talent. And it's exciting to see the young guys growing into their own. Josh Hennig here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM. Of course, Game Night being brought to you by my friends over at the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. Catch all of the football action, basketball, and more. Experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get in on all the games you love at the FanDuel Sportsbook inside Bally's Hotel and Casino off the boardwalk in Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. Over on the text board at 609-403-0973. Paul in Millville chimes in and says, "Hey, Josh, I had 2 major takeaways from the game. First, Hurts is really developing well. It's crazy how his best pass of his career was a deep ball that was dropped by Watkins." First of all, we're going to Paul's next point. The Watkins drop was probably the most frustrating part of the game yesterday. Because even in a win, you see how young and inexperienced this team is. The Watkins drop is a perfect example of something that, if you're a college player, doesn't happen to you, right? You're not dealing with that type of rigidity when it comes to needing complete accuracy and timing and perfection. In the NFL, someone once said, in the NFL, you have to throw your receivers open, and in college, you throw to open receivers. So, to me, I think Watkins is still learning part of that equation, and I think he was trying to maybe make a play before he ever caught the ball. Paul in Millville's second point over at 609-403-0973 says, "My second takeaway is Davion Taylor is really exciting me. I think we have something great with this kid at a position of linebacker that we never get right. Thanks." That's from Paul in Millville. The problem with linebacker, though, is not as much of them getting it right, Paul. Remember, it's a position they don't prioritize. Mike Gill has brought this up numerous times on the Sports Bash. Go back to the Andy Reid era. Jeremiah Trotter was not drafted by Andy Reid. The Eagles went out and brought in guys like in free agency, guys like the Tahani Jones and people like that. They don't have a history of drafting linebackers for about 20 years now. From Reid to Kelly to Peterson and now Sirianni, all these head coaches have been a part of a front office that doesn't prioritize that position in certain ways. So whether it was great scouting on their part or whether it was an actual genuine evaluation of Davion Taylor, we may never know until the 30 for 30 comes out in about 20 years. That'll tell us about the Howie Roseman era. But until then, we're going to have to assume that there might be a little bit of luck with the Davion Taylor pick. All right, we'll get more into the Eagles coming up next. Chris Franklin from NJ.com joins me next right here on 97.3 ESPN FM and the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free thanks to First Bank of Seattle City. I'm Josh Hennig. This is Game Night.
It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey tomorrow on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app with Tim Saunders and Steve Coates calling all the play-by-play action.
The Flyers host the Calgary Flames.
Coverage begins at 7 p.m. It's Philadelphia Flyers hockey on the radio home of the Flyers in South Jersey. 97.3 ESPN and listen live on the free mobile app.
It's game time. Football season is in full swing, and you can catch all the NFL action at the FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's Hotel and Casino, Atlantic City. It's time to get in on all the games you love. Experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get your game face on and score big this weekend when you bet at FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's off the boardwalk, Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
You're listening to Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN FM. Day after the Eagles win. What do we really take from it? You heard my thoughts. We'll talk with Chris Franklin right now from NJ.com. Covers the Eagles. He joins us right now on 97.3 ESPN. Where, Chris, we've seen a lot of versions of this team throughout the year. So after the latest win, what do we make of this version of the Philadelphia Eagles?
I think this one is one you can be optimistic about, and it's one that you hope they basically hit the Control-C and copy the game plan and use it down the line. Because when you look at the way this Eagles offense came out and still continually establish the run game and be physical and basically push the Broncos around, I think that's something that the basically people around the Philadelphia area can look forward to. And then defensively, I mean, listen, I thought Jonathan Gannon had to produce more and do better jobs, and you saw that defense actually play well. And lo and behold, they actually played some press coverage. It was weird to see that, and it worked out well and showed some different disguised blitzes. So I think this is a team that has the makings of being decent, and just hope that they continue to do that down the line.
Chris, let's stick with the defense. You just mentioned about what they were doing yesterday. To me, I feel like when this team wins, Gannon lets guys like Slay do what they do best. Davion Taylor, Slay, Avonte Maddox, they all seem to have these pretty good games when Gannon lets them do what they do best. Whereas when he tries to put a square peg in a round hole, that seems to be when this defense gets eaten alive.
It also comes to the matchup too. I think to me, just from the outside looking in, it's almost like a respect factor at the quarterback position. Because when you look at guys like Justin Herbert, when you look at like Tom Brady, he seems to go play in the shell and he doesn't want to give up the big plays. But when you take going like the Teddy Bridgewater to Jared Goff, he says, "Hey guys, let him go at it." I think it's something that they have to continue to do. Just let these guys play the press and be in there. Because I think there's something to it where it says, hey, we're going to be aggressive. We're not going to bow down to the opposing quarterback or the opposing offense. We're going to take this basically system to you and try to play a physical brand of football, a tight coverage, and it works out in the end. So I think Gannon, you hope that Gannon's learned from this and continues to use that from here on out.
A couple of guys we just mentioned are players who have been drafted by the Eagles. Maddox, Davion Taylor. Also this year, Milton Williams. He had an impact on the game yesterday. A lot of people like to say, Chris, that, the Eagles, they don't know how to draft. They can't make draft picks. But I just named 3 guys that were all drafted by this organization. I understand they weren't first-round picks, but they still were drafted and cultivated by this organization.
I think that's a big thing, especially when you look at Davion Taylor. And I'm going to say this: I'm not calling him Jeremiah Trotter. I'm absolutely not. But when he's taking the same type of arc, you got to let, especially the linebacker position and safety positions, you got to let guys develop and get used to the game experience and just see different fronts and different looks. And Taylor's taking advantage of it. And you see that you always know he has the physical gifts to be a really good player. It's just a matter of just understanding the game, and he's starting to do that. You mentioned Williams. He's been another guy as well, too. I think a lot of people look at the first and second round picks, and you start to question, well, not Devonta Smith because he played well yesterday, but you look at some of the past ones like Jalen Reagor and some of those other guys, Derek Barnett, and you look like, well, you don't see the production that you normally do. You want to see from guys that you used a high draft asset on. And these late second, third, fourth round guys are starting to hit a little bit. And you hope that the Eagles are finally learning how to develop these guys and get the most out of them instead of basically forcing them into a system and just say, hey, play this, and you get nothing from them. So You're starting to see their strengths are being utilized a little bit more, and that's when you're going to see the benefits of those draft picks start to come through.
Chris, I asked this question earlier this year, and I don't know if we have the right answer for it, but I'm going to ask it again to you. There's a part of me that wonders, was part of the issue in the past that the Doug Peterson coaches and his era of coaching was just not good at developing young players? That he was better suited to have veteran players, and that Sirianni's guys are better suited for player development?
I think there's more of an emphasis on development with this new coaching staff as opposed to beforehand. Because listen, especially after the Super Bowl year, it seems like the Eagles were like hey, we got to win now, repeat type mode. So you err on the side of going to the veterans, and then you hope you can add some of those guys down the line. Whereas when you look at Nick Sirianni and the rest of the coaching staff, they actually set aside times, either Thursday or Friday, where they set aside times to let those young guys get developed and get snaps in practice, where you think, hey, you know what, this is extra time that you can get your starters in there to get an extra couple plays. They actually set aside time to let these guys on the practice squad, third stringers, to get used to, so get some valuable playing snaps. And I think you're starting to see developments on it, not just on the offensive side, but also special teams. So it seems to be more of an emphasis on that, and that's good in the long run because, hey, if there's a guy who doesn't work out or you don't foresee being on this team a year or two ago, maybe trade him for a 5th or 6th round pick and continue that cycle and use that pick later on to get another, like a wide receiver or lineman or what have you, a veteran from another team. So there's little things you can do that, but they have to continue to focus on the development because, hey, you have all these draft picks you brought in, is, for lack of better words, cheap labor. It works out for the salary cap too. So they have to continue to put an emphasis when it comes to these draft picks and their development.
Chris Franklin joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at C Franklin News on Twitter. Check out all of his coverage of the Eagles as well as the 76ers over at NJ.com. Chris, I want to flip over to the offense now because another guy who was drafted by this organization was Jalen Hurts. And I understand that everyone likes to say, well, the Eagles didn't draft him with the intent of him being the starter. But guess what? We're here now. He's the starter now. And to me, what I saw yesterday was the best version of him that I have seen in the NFL, because that's the closest I've seen of him to what he did at Oklahoma, where he was leading the Big 12 in completion percentage. He was efficient yesterday. He ran the ball only when necessary. He planted his back foot. He made the throws. And it seemed like to me, Chris, that this is the version of Hurts that I think when the Eagles drafted him, they hoped for all along.
Yeah, and he mentions the things like when it came to the mechanics, they were setting aside Brian Johnson, Shane Steich, and Sirianni. All those guys are doing a great job developing him so he can be that. And I truly believe that the Eagles have to allow him to get time to develop into his quarterback because he has the tools to do that. And when you look at this draft class that's coming out, you got Matt Corral and Malik Wilson. I don't see anybody there that can come in even 2-3 years down the line that could be project to be better than Hurts right now. I just truly don't. And I think if you give Hurts time to basically get better and get more experience, he could be really good. And he's got the intangibles that you want from an NFL quarterback. I mean, how many times have we've heard guys going, hey, he's got the physical attributes, he's got the size, he's got a big NFL arm. When it comes time to, say, the third, fourth quarter, you need to come back. Or you go in the locker room in the leadership, you need to win the locker room. You don't hear that. Well, Hurts has that other intangibles. He's got the physical traits to be a good quarterback in this league. He just needs to develop a lot more experience. And I think it'll be in the Eagles' best interest to allow that to happen and let him become potentially the franchise guy.
Yeah, I mean, over the years, we've seen for the older folks out there, guys like Jeff George, all the physical ability, but couldn't actually do it. Or for the younger folks out there, Sam Bradford, who couldn't stay healthy, but he had one of the greatest pro days we all ever seen, right? So, having physical ability may get you to the NFL, but it's the other stuff that actually allows you to be successful in the NFL.
Yeah, safety Sam, check down Charlie, whatever you want to call Bradford. It's like, hey, there's a guy breaking down the field 10, 15 yards. Let me throw that to the swing pass. Yeah, right. But it's an exact science at the quarterback position. And when you have a guy who shows any semblance of being the type of person who like Jalen Hurts has become, you got to run with that. I mean, when you look at just what he's not able to do with throwing the ball, okay, his completion, last year everybody likes to point to the 52% completion rate, which definitely was an area of concern. Now he's completed nearly 60% of his passes. he's getting, and the next thing was, well, he's not throwing a deep ball. He's only throwing to the right stuff. He's spreading the ball around. Yes, sir. As he gets more time, you'll start to see more of a spread when it comes to displacement and everything else of that too. So I think the more and more that he gets experience, you have that. You just can't continue to go, okay, after 2 years, all right, let's start a quarterback, let's get a new guy in here and hope that he's even to the same level as Hurts or better. You have the Eagles have somebody that could potentially be a good guy. Just gotta let him get time.
I'm glad you also brought up the fact of who's coming out of college, because I said this last week when the whole story came out about Howie Roseman was going to see Sam Howell and Kenny Pickett. And I was like, look, if you're an Eagle fan and you're okay with getting the next Kirk Cousins or the next Sam Darnold, then okay, dump Jalen Hurts and draft one of those guys. But to me, I'm not giving up on a young player just because he hasn't hit his prime yet. He hasn't figured it all out yet. I just feel like we live in a world where people are so impatient. They have no desire to let people grow and develop and become who they are. And my fear is this is a fan base that has lived watching players leave Philadelphia and go on to big things elsewhere. And I ask people, do you want that to be Jalen Hurts?
I think if Jalen Hurts right now, say, went to, I don't know, if he went to the Texans, given their current state of affairs at the quarterback position, if he went to Detroit would welcome him with open arms. After seeing what Jared Goff did, not only in person, but seeing what he did against the Steelers yesterday, they would welcome him with open arms. And you can't play around with that position. And when you got something there and you have some raw tools that you can build around, and as you see, the offense is starting to build around his strengths. And they gave him more balance, so he's not throwing 40, 50 times a game. They're just limiting around. They're using the play action. They're basing everything off the run. You see what he can do. And I do have to give credit to Nick Sirianni. His play calling has gotten better as the year's going on. The game plans have been tailored around Hurts, and that's gotten better as well too. But you can't continue to just discard these guys and go somewhere else. If not, if you continue to try to look for quarterback solutions, you can end up in a situation like up in Detroit and in situations like the Texans and other places around the league. So you just can't continue to do that.
Chris Franklin from NJ.com joining us here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN at C Franklin News. Chris, you brought up my next question, Sirianni. Listen, I was ripping the guy weeks ago. I mean, I was eviscerating him day in and day out on the radio. And I got to admit, this guy has come a long way since the guy from a few weeks ago. And I don't know if it's just maturity. I don't know if it's just, with time comes experience. I don't know what it is, but I've seen some legitimate growth from Nick Sirianni, not just the play caller, but also the head coach. I've seen the development from the first time he spoke to the media where he didn't know what to say half the time to how he is now. Yeah, he's quirky. Yeah, he's different. Yeah, he sounds a little like Tim Tebow when he talks at times. But you know what? I'm seeing the growth and development from him.
Well, he just needs the time and experience. He's like everything. Like for me, when I first started as a writer, it was rough. And now you look back and I'm like, wow, I came a little bit of a long way. Same thing goes with coaching. You start to get more and more of these experiences. You start to see what the ebbs and flows are. You get into a rhythm and you start to make adjustments based off of that. And he's still a very young guy. The players really still rally around him because right now, given the team's record, like if you even look back like 3 weeks ago, he could have lost the locker room with some of that stuff. But the veterans are still truly buying into his messaging. That you see that he's open to changing suggestions. He's not steadfast in his ways when it comes to there, and he's personal. I think his personality is helping it lend that to the change that's going on right now. So you add all those factors in together, and he continues to get more experience. I think you'll see that he's going to be a decent coach in this league, and it's just going to take some extra time. And so far, the selection of him is looking like it's pretty good so far. Because you could be Dan Campbell right now. So we could talk about Dan Campbell and biting kneecaps, but Sirianni's actually doing a pretty decent job, especially to this point.
Well, listen, I got to say this about Campbell. I feel bad for the guy right now because I feel like the dude is coaching his butt off, and he's trying. He even took the play calling away from Anthony Lynn because he felt like that was holding the offense back, and it still didn't change anything. You go to Detroit, it's kind of purgatory anyway. So, I kind of feel like, Campbell's a coach that he's kind of between a rock and a hard place right now.
He is, but at the same time, I thought it was a little. I know he's trying to get a spark somehow, but I think when you do rash moves like taking the play calling away from Lynn, that just shows more desperation. And when you show that, I think I know they still have a win. They need to find whatever spark you can. But when you do that, I think you can lose a lot. Not just the other coaches on the staff. You can lose some of the players going, "Oh wow, this guy." They brought this guy in to add him to the staff, and he doesn't even believe him already after halfway through the season. What is he going to do with us? So I know he's a very passionate guy, and he's well respected around the league. They're going to get a win eventually, I think, somewhere down this stretch. But I still have some reservations if he was ready to be a head coach in this league. To me, there's a couple too many questions around there. But yeah, it's not the best situation up there in Detroit.
No, it's not. But you mentioned you don't know if he was ready, but I would argue that we could say that I'm not even fully sure Gannon, for example, is fully ready to be a D coordinator, but we have him out there, right? Sirianni, he still does things, and there's things that happen that make you scratch your head. So, like we said about Hurts, I think that we need to let things play out and be patient with sometimes these guys. You want to be like college football right now. I mean, Washington, I know it's completely off topic, but Washington just fired Jimmy Lake basically because the organization was uncomfortable with him, right? Not because he's a bad football coach. So it's like, you want to be like a college football program that's just firing dudes because the head coach and the athletic director are not on the same page, right? So you got to let these coaches, these quarterbacks, you got to let these players actually what happens over a 17-game schedule.
Yeah, you mentioned the big O word right there, organization. That's another key thing. You have to have patience a lot of times too, because for all the if you're coming into a situation, especially if you're going to be a new head coach going into a situation, and you see this one team that likes to fire somebody with it every 2 years or 1 year, not really have a chance to institute what you're really truly going to do. Yeah, there's many questions. I mean, you look at Detroit, and you just see the guys that they kept continuing to bring in. I want to say it's Campbell. I forget his name. Jim Caldwell.
Yeah.
Ever since Jim Caldwell left up there, it's just been a mess. And Caldwell was doing in my opinion, was doing a decent job. So ever since he did, it's been a mess. And then so you look at the Ford family and the Ford organization, and them not basically finding the wrong people continually, and it just seems like that organization is in disarray at times. So I think that's another key aspect of it. Not saying now we've heard the reports that have come out at times when it comes to the Eagles, and there's been some stuff that comes here and there. It's not perfect, but I'd rather be in a situation, if I'm a prospective coach or anything, be in a situation where, hey, you know what, the owner and the general manager have a propensity to let you stay a few years, as long as you attend, reportedly attend some Christmas parties, stuff like that. But they may keep you around there for a few years, and then they'll let you go from that way too. So I think that's like the organizationally wise. I think that the Eagles are in organizations like that are way better than stuff like in Detroit.
Chris, before I let you go, obviously coming up on the Eagles schedule, you have a Saints team that just had a rock fight with the Titans yesterday, and the Titans barely won the game. So I know a lot of people are saying, Trevor Siemian's their quarterback, but it's like, hey man, that Saints team, they're still playing really hard. So this is not going to be an easy game at all this Sunday at the Link.
Not at all, especially with Sean Payton's the key guy. He can scheme up so many different looks against this defense, and that's going to be. I think a lot of people are going to look at the matchup on the field, Siemian, and if Alvin Kamara comes back and plays against that Eagles defense, I think it's going to be a big matchup to watch. Sean Payton, what formationally, how is he going to try to attack Gannon's defense, and if Gannon is going to continue to use the press, or is he going to go back into more of a shell look as well too? That's going to be a fun matchup to watch. That in the chess match that's going on between the two of them.
And also don't forget about the fact that, I mentioned the Saints defense. I mean, you're talking about a guy in Allen who's just, I don't think people give that guy enough credit. I mean, I understand when he was over in Oakland with the Raiders, that was a miserable mess, but he's done an incredible job with the Saints defense the last couple of years.
Yeah, too. He's a guy that I think he's a guy who's really. We talking about Dan Campbell getting that. I think he's ready for another head coaching job. I really truly believe that. To me, you look at his defenses that they're generally technically sound. He comes up with some good schemes, and he seems to I've always had them playing at a high level. Even the years when they don't have the personnel that's there that can truly continue go run, make a deep run to deeper in the playoffs, he gives them the most out of what he has. So that's a guy I believe in this next coaching round. I would be shocked if he doesn't get another chance.
He's Chris Franklin. Give him a follow on Twitter at @CFranklinNews. Covers the Eagles and the Sixers for NJ.com. And they joined us right here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Chris, always appreciate you jumping on in the conversation. Good stuff today.
Hey, great stuff, Josh. I appreciate it. Thanks, man.
Josh Hennig here on Game Night. Hanging out with you guys. We'll get back to your thoughts and comments on the other side. Text board is open, 609-403-0973. And you can DM the show through the 97.3 ESPN mobile app. It's free. Thanks to First Bank of Sea Isle City.
This is the radio home for Philadelphia Eagles football. It's week 11 of the 2021 season with the Eagles hosting the New Orleans Saints.
Now what do the Saints do?
Hey, well, the Eagles do a nice job of rallying to the football. Now, they understand the importance of this football game.
Pre-game coverage begins this Sunday at noon. Merrill and Mike call all the action starting at 1. This is where the Eagles play. 97.3 ESPN, South Jersey's Eagles station.
It's game time. Football season is in full swing, and you can catch all the NFL action at the FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's Hotel and Casino, Atlantic City. It's time to get in on all the games you love. Experience sports betting done right with live streaming games, food and beverage, self-service betting kiosks, and more. Get your game face on and score big this weekend when you bet at FanDuel Sportsbook in Bally's off the boardwalk, Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER.
Before you sell or trade your vehicle, you should go to Bennett Chevy and get the most for your trade. This month, Bennett Chevy starts the bidding on trades at $7,000. Yes, Bennett will give you a minimum $7,000 for any old clunker you can push, pull, or tow towards any pre-owned vehicle in stock. And remember, we'll buy yours even if you don't buy ours. And if we start at $7,000 for junk, how much more do you think we'll pay for a good running vehicle? Grab your title or payment book and get the absolute most for your trade today. Want a brand new vehicle? While others are charging a fortune for new vehicles, Bennett still rejects any opportunity to charge 1 penny over MSRP. Stuck in a lease? Bennett can get you out early, all makes and models. So come see what your vehicle's worth today at Bennett, where there's absolutely no obligation and no pressure, because our non-commissioned sales staff is paid based on your satisfaction, not how much you spend. Find new roads at Bennett Chevy, Egg Harbor Township, and BennettChevy.com.
Now, more Game Night with Josh Hennig on 97.3 ESPN and the free mobile app.
Josh Hennig back here on Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Of course, Game Night, as always, being brought to you by the FanDuel Sportsbook at Bally's Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. Bet all the action in style this football season, and of course with basketball here as well in the state-of-the-art FanDuel Sportsbook just off the boardwalk at Bally's Atlantic City. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And, of course, we give us sponsors of the Bet of the Week each week, presented by FanDuel Sportsbook at Bally's Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. Oregon State didn't just cover the 12.5. They crushed Stanford on Saturday. So I hope you guys jumped on that. I also told you guys to take the over in the NC State Wake Forest game. We nailed that Bet of the Week pick. And we also gave you the under on the Penn State versus Michigan game, which you heard right here on Saturday on 97.3 ESPN. The NFL wasn't as kind to us. You know, the Patriots-Browns game over-under was 45. The Patriots scored 45 by themselves. I think there was a huge miscalculation by the Browns front office about how to build that defense, because it's obviously been exposed horribly. And that game went very bad yesterday for Cleveland. Their offensive and defensive lines both look completely outclassed and outmatched completely. So back to the Eagles stuff here. I want to read a stat for you guys. You know, and I understand stats can be interpreted however you want. But Jeff Kerr of CBS Sports put this out earlier today. He was on the Sports Bash with Mike Gill earlier today. And the stat goes like there's only 7 quarterbacks in NFL history who have 2,000 passing yards to 500 rushing yards through the first 10 games of a season. Lamar Jackson has done it twice. Randall Cunningham did it in 1990. Michael Vick did it in 2011 with the Eagles. Robert Griffin III did it in 2012. Russell Wilson did it in 2014. Kyler Murray did it last year, and Jalen Hurts is doing it this year. My two big takeaways is that, number one, is it a coincidence that there are 3 Eagles on this list? Cunningham did it in Eagles green, Vic did it in Eagles green, and Hurts did it in Eagles green. I mean, if there is not even a slight pattern there, I think we'd be ridiculous to ignore that. But Jalen Hurts is doing things that are not being appreciated by some people because he doesn't fit the mold or the stereotype that some people have for a quarterback. And at the end of the day, you may not be a Jalen Hurts fan, but you need to respect what the man brings to the game. And he's basically doing this year, he's starting to look like the quarterback that was second in the Heisman Trophy voting back in 2019. Because these last few games, he's looked more like the efficient player he was at Oklahoma. And when he had that 69% completion percentage, he did throw the ball 340 times in 14 games. So it's not like he was just throwing the ball 15 times a game. No, he was going out there and chucking it. So listen, I'm not saying Jalen Hurts is going to be a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. But considering the fact of what he's capable of, I think it's fair to say that people need to give more time before they're ready to throw the baby out with the bathwater, as some people like to use that term. A couple people over on the YouTube channel at 973 ESPN. Coach chimes in and says, there's no possible way we lose at home again this week. Right. Listen, there is a way. The Saints defense is that good. This is going to be a rock fight. This is going to be who is going to win in the trenches this week. And the Eagles defense has to go out there and prove that they can handle that. The Eagles offensive and defensive lines have to prove that when they get punched, they can punch back. What's the old saying from Mike Tyson? Everyone's got a game plan until they get punched in the face. Well, that's what's going to happen this Sunday at the Link. Nick Sirianni and Jonathan Gannon are going to have a game plan until Sean Payton and Dennis Allen punch their game plan square in the nose. Then it's going to find out what Gannon and Sirianni are really made of. So is there a possible way they lose? Yes. Will they lose? I hope not, because the Eagle fans deserve a home win before the bye week. And listen, Jeff Bone and Pookie said the same thing. The Eagles have to win at the Link. I understand that the most frustrating thing about this season probably is the no home wins, considering the fact that Lincoln Financial Field has been a tremendous edge for the Eagles over the years. But winning all these games on the road also is ridiculously impressive. Listen, you want to get the Saints win because you have 2 road games before the bye week. Then you come out of the bye week with back-to-back home games against division rivals, Washington and the Giants. So you would hope they can win at home this week. Can they? Yes. Will they? Good question. Chris Franklin brought up earlier, I think a big deciding factor will be Alvin Kamara. If Kamara is out there on the field, I think that this is going to be some trouble. But if there's no Kamara this week, it definitely makes the possibility of winning easier. Because at the end of the day, the Saints don't have the firepower offensively. I keep telling you guys, that Saints-Titans game was just an ugly game. 2 teams just throwing their best, ground and pound at each other, hoping for the best. And at the end of the day, the Titans edged out a victory over a Saints team that would not go away. They couldn't put them away. Remember, this is the Saints team that also beat the Tampa Bay Bucks a couple of weeks ago, a team that came to Philadelphia and pretty much had their way for 3 quarters. So don't take the Saints for granted. Don't focus on the quarterback. Focus on the team. All right, I'm Josh Hennig, at Josh Hennig on Twitter. This is Game Night on 97.3 ESPN. Monday Night Football tonight, Rams versus 49ers. Coverage at 7:30. I'll be back tomorrow at 6 p.m. following Sports Batch with Mike Gill on 97.3.